Tonight, the rain is falling softly over a small English village. The year is 1300. Beyond the reach of modern lights, beyond the noise of cities and machines, a handful of thatched cottages sit quietly beneath the darkening sky. Fires glow behind wooden shutters. Families gather close to their hearths. The muddy lanes are slowly emptying as the day comes to an end. For the next little while, you will leave the modern world behind. You will walk the rain-soaked village paths, sit beside warm medieval hearths, and watch as an ordinary evening unfolds in a place where life moved more slowly and night arrived without interruption. So settle in, get comfortable, and allow yourself to drift gently into the past. Tonight, you are spending a rainy evening in a medieval village, and this is your story. The afternoon is beginning to soften. You can feel it in the light. That particular quality of late summer sun when it loses its sharpness and starts to lay itself flat across the land, stretching shadows long and thin across the dirt lanes. The air has been warm all day, carrying the dry smell of cut hay and sun-baked earth. But something is shifting beneath it now. A coolness moves through, faint as a held breath, and the leaves on the elm at the edge of the common turn their pale undersides upward, the way they always do before rain. You are standing near the centre of the village, where the main lane widens slightly before narrowing again toward the mill. Around you, the afternoon is still going about its business, but slowly, with the unhurried weight of a day that knows it is nearly done. A woman crosses the lane ahead of you, her arms wrapped around a bundle of linen she has been drying on the hedgerow since morning. She moves with purpose, not urgency. The practiced efficiency of someone who has watched the weather all her life and knows what the elm leaves mean. Behind her, two children trail like ducklings, each carrying what they could grab: a wooden bowl, a length of rope, a small leather shoe that belongs, apparently, to neither of them. The cottages along the lane are low and close to the ground, their thatched roofs thick and deeply sloped, dark with age at the ridge where years of rain and smoke have settled into the straw. Moss grows in the shadowed parts. The walls are wattle and daub, pale grey-brown where the lime wash has weathered, and each cottage sits in its own small plot, hemmed in by simple woven hurdles or low earthen banks. Gardens run behind most of them. Herbs closest to the door, then cabbages and leeks, then the rougher ground given over to chickens and the occasional pig. From somewhere behind the nearer cottages, you can hear the sound of a handmill turning. A low, rhythmic grinding that has been part of the afternoon's background since midday. It stops now, replaced by the scrape of something heavy being dragged across a stone floor, and then voices, muffled through daub walls, exchanging a few words you cannot quite make out. The smell reaches you before the first cloud does. It is the smell of rain approaching across dry ground. Something mineral and deep, like cool stone drawn up from a well, mixed with the softer scent of turned earth releasing itself. People here would have a word for it, though it would not be the word you know. They would simply say the rain is coming, and they would be right, and they would already be moving. At the far end of the lane, an old man is coaxing two brown cattle through a gate and into a low byre. The animals walk slowly, their hooves soft on the packed earth, their sides swaying with the easy rhythm of creatures that have made this same journey every evening for years. The man taps the rump of the slower one gently, says something low to her, pulls the gate shut behind them, and lifts a wooden pin into its loop. He does not look at the sky. He already knows. A dog has settled itself under the overhanging thatch of the nearest cottage, tucked neatly against the wall where the eaves drip wide. It watches the lane with calm brown eyes, its chin on its paws, already waiting. The light shifts. The sun is still above the horizon, but a broad shelf of cloud has moved in from the west, and where sunlight had been pooling warm and amber across the lane, there is now a softer, more even grey. The world does not go dark. It simply becomes more itself, more quiet in its colours, the greens deeper, the mud of the lane a richer, colder brown. Smoke is beginning to rise from 2 or 3 chimneys now, not the thin, wavering streams of a modest cooking fire held low through the afternoon, but fuller, steadier columns that mean someone has just laid a new log and coaxed the flame up properly. The smoke catches the still air and rises slowly, then bends as it rises higher, and a breath of wind catches it, pulling it sideways over the roofline in a soft grey drift. The smell of it reaches you. Wood smoke and something warm underneath, a faint suggestion of pottage thickening in a pot. A young man is unloading the last of a cart near the granary at the edge of the common. He works with the focused, efficient energy of someone who wants to be finished before the first drops fall. The sacks he lifts are grain, heavy and slightly damp from the morning dew that never fully dried, and he carries each one at a careful tilt, ducking sideways through the low doorway. His boots leave deep prints in the soft ground by the cartwheel, and each print is already filling at the base with a thin skin of water, the earth below too hard-packed to drink quickly. From inside the granary comes the sound of the sacks being set down one by one. A low, solid thump, then a pause, then another. Then silence as he comes back out, tips the cart up onto its end against the wall, and stands for a moment rolling his shoulders. He looks at the sky briefly, just once, then turns and walks back up the lane toward the cottages, tucking his hands under his arms. The first drop falls on the back of your hand. It is a single drop, large and cold, and it lands with more weight than you expected and spreads outward in a small, dark circle. Another falls in the dust of the lane a yard away, leaving a small crater, then another and another, scattered at first, wide apart, each one distinct. The dust darkens where they land. On the thatch overhead, a handful of drops land soft and irregular, and then a few more, and the sound builds slowly from almost nothing into a quiet, sustained rustling. The rain does not arrive all at once. It gathers itself, feels its way in, fills the spaces between things. It finds the leaves on the hedgerow and taps each one in turn. It finds the wooden trough by the well and begins to tap a patient rhythm against the rim. It finds the lane and darkens it in patches, the dry dust clinging for a moment before giving in. The woman who passed you earlier has already disappeared inside. The children with her, the linen, the wooden bowl, all of it gone, as if the cottage simply absorbed them. A thin line of light has appeared below the door, warm and golden against the darkening lane. Inside, you know without seeing. This is how it always is, in any village, in any year. The family is gathering to the hearth. The fire is the centre now. The working day is folding itself up, tucking itself away. The long table will be set close to the heat. The pottage will be stirred once more, its smell filling the low room. Onions, dried peas, a bone boiled soft. The children will sit on their stools and lean toward the warmth, and outside will be outside, and inside will be everything. More lights appear, not bright lights. There is no brightness to them, only the soft, golden pulse of tallow candles and rushlights set in iron holders, their glow just visible through oiled linen stretched across the window openings. Each cottage that shows a light shows only a little of it, a warm thread at the edge of a shutter, or a soft amber wash against the thatch above the door. But taken together, across the lane and back along the row of cottages facing the common, the lights make a kind of answer to the rain. Small warmth set against the coming dark. The rain is steady now, not heavy, not loud, but continuous. A sound that fills the air evenly, covering everything, softening every edge. The lane is darkened all the way along its length, and the ruts that the cart wheels have worn into it are filling slowly, carrying thin trickles toward the ditch at the side. The elm at the edge of the common sheds great quiet drops from its canopy, each one loud for a moment against the leaves below before the general sound of rain absorbs them. The village has drawn itself in. The animals are sheltered. The grain is stored. The fires are built up. The doors are closed. And now the rain moves through the lanes and over the rooftops and across the common ground unopposed, settling into the thatch, running off the eaves, filling the quiet places between things with its slow and steady sound. You are standing in a village at the end of a day in a year that will be written as 1300, and the rain is falling on the rooftops all around you, and from beneath each door there comes a thin and steady glow. The glow beneath the nearest door is warm enough to feel, almost, even from where you stand in the lane. The rain moves through the air around you in soft curtains, and the world beyond the cottages has gone a deep, unreadable grey. But here, along the row, the small lights persist, steady, unhurried, each one a sign of a household folded inward on itself, attending to its own quiet evening. You step closer to the nearest cottage, and the sounds find you through the wall. A low exchange of voices, the knock of a pot against stone, a child asking something in the particular rising tone that expects to be answered. Then the smell, warm and layered, rising from somewhere near the base of the walls where the door breathes. Wood smoke first, and beneath it the long-cooked richness of a pottage that has been sitting near the heat since mid-morning, its contents softened down to something dense and fragrant. Onion and leek, dried peas, swollen full, a marrow bone releasing the last of itself into the broth. Inside, the hearth is the room's whole logic. Everything is arranged around it. The low stools pulled close, the single trestle table shifted nearer than it would be on a warm afternoon. The wet cloaks and hoods hung on pegs driven into the timber frame above the fire where the heat can reach them. They drip slowly onto the packed earth floor, darkening it in slow spreading patches that will be dry again by morning. The cloaks steam slightly in the warmth, giving off the wet wool smell that belongs entirely to rooms like this, in seasons like this, in years beyond counting. The fire itself is not large, but it does not need to be. The room is small, the ceiling low, the walls thick enough to hold the day's warmth in long after the air outside has given it up. Fuel is not spent carelessly. A log is a log, and each one has been cut, hauled, split, and stacked by someone's hands. But tonight the fire is built a little higher than usual. The embers deepened with a fresh piece of oak laid across the andirons, and the light it throws is generous and shifting, moving across the timber beams overhead and catching the edge of a copper pot in brief, warm flashes. A woman is tearing bread at the table. The loaf is dense and dark, made from rye with a little wheat mixed in, and it pulls apart in firm, rough pieces that she sets in a line along the board. There is no ceremony to it. This is the end of the day's last loaf, the heel of something baked 2 days ago, still good, still filling, best eaten with the broth already warming in the pot. She sets a wooden bowl at each place, pours without measuring, and tucks a sprig of dried thyme into the rim of the pot the way someone might do a thing they have done every evening for 20 years without ever deciding to. Further along the lane, in a narrower cottage set slightly back from the others, an older man is settled into a chair close to the fire. Not a fine chair, just a high-backed thing made from rough-cut planks with a folded wool blanket draped over the seat to soften it. His boots are off. They sit near the hearth, still damp from the afternoon, their leather beginning to stiffen slightly as the heat finds them. He is doing nothing in particular, which is its own kind of thing after a long day. His hands rest in his lap. His eyes are half open, watching the fire with the unfocused attention of someone who is not quite asleep and not quite awake, but comfortable in the space between. A cat moves through the room without acknowledging him and settles itself directly on the hearthstone, folding its legs underneath itself with the precise satisfaction of an animal who has chosen exactly the right spot. The firelight catches the tips of its fur. It closes its eyes. Rain taps against the shutter beside the old man's chair. A soft, irregular rhythm, not insistent, just present. The shutter is made from split oak boards pegged together, and it fits imperfectly, the way most things in a cottage like this fit imperfectly, with a thin gap along one edge where the wood has shrunk. Through that gap, a thread of cold air moves in and disappears into the warm room before it can change anything. The candle on the shelf across from the door bends slightly in response, its flame leaning and recovering, leaning and recovering. In another household, the children are already pulling away from the table. The meal is done. The bowls wiped with the last of the bread, the pot moved back from the direct heat to sit warm at the edge. The younger child, perhaps 4 years old, has gone boneless in the way of very small children after eating, her body listing sideways against the older one beside her, her eyes heavy and slow. The older child is not much more awake. He is perhaps 7, and he is fighting it with the pure stubbornness of someone who does not yet understand that the body always wins. His head drops, lifts, drops again. His mother watches him from across the fire without saying anything. There is nothing to say. In a little while, she will move them both to the sleeping platform at the back of the room, under the wool blankets and the rough linen, and they will be gone before she has finished tucking the edge in. The sleeping platform is raised off the floor by a foot or so, a practical thing, since the floor is cold even in summer and colder now. The straw beneath the linen is this year's, still with a faint dry sweetness to it, not yet flattened entirely by use. Above it, The rafters are low and dark with smoke from years of fires, hung here and there with dried herbs tied in small bundles, chamomile, meadowsweet, a few sprigs of lavender from the garden that did well this summer. Their smell is faint and dry in the upper air of the room, just enough to catch if you breathe slowly. The dog that settled under the eaves earlier has been let inside. It is large enough to take up most of the floor space between the door and the hearth, and it has arranged itself there as though the position were a matter of serious calculation, its chin resting on its front paws, its coat still slightly damp along the spine. Every few minutes it exhales, a long, slow breath that moves its whole side, and then is still again. Outside, the rain continues at its own pace, indifferent and even. You can hear it on the thatch above, a soft, layered sound, not a drumming, but more like the sound of breath through grass or wind through barley, too soft to be any single thing, but steady enough to fill the whole background of the evening. It runs from the roof edge in a thin curtain, pattering into the mud below the eaves, carving its familiar channels into the ground it has carved every wet season for as long as the cottage has stood. The lane is empty now. There is no one left outside who does not need to be. A loose chicken that escaped the coop has tucked itself under the upturned cart near the granary, and that is the last living thing visible in the open air. The village has completed its retreat. Every fire is burning. Every door is shut. The light from the windows and door edges is the same warm amber it was when you first noticed it, but now it falls against a deeper darkness. The afternoon has gone without announcing its departure, and the evening has taken its place quietly, the way evenings do in a place with no clock and no bell rung for the hour. You know it is evening because the light inside is the only light, because the sounds from within the cottages have softened to the low register of people no longer working, because the rain sounds different now against a world that has gone fully still around it. Night is not here yet. The sky still holds a residue of the day in its deep blue grey, enough to know that true dark is an hour away, perhaps less. But the village does not feel like a place waiting for anything more. It has arrived where it was always heading, warm, contained, and quiet. And the rain falling steadily outside is not a disruption to that, but a part of it, a soft and familiar presence that has always kept company with firelight and closed doors and the smell of supper still warm in the pot. The fires are lower now, not out, not yet, but settled into themselves, the logs having given up their flame and become instead a deep, shifting architecture of embers, each one glowing orange and amber at its core, cooling to grey at the edges. The light they give is less than it was an hour ago, softer and more uneven, moving across the low ceilings in slow, wordless rhythms. Shadows fill the upper corners of the rooms. The beams disappear into darkness overhead. The world has contracted to the circle of warmth nearest the hearth, and even that circle is narrowing gently as the night deepens. In the cottage where the children fell asleep at the table, the mother has long since finished her own quieter settling. The bowls stacked, the pot moved to the cold side of the hearth, the tallow candle on the shelf pinched out between her fingers. She lay down in the darkness and was gone before the smell of the snuffed wick had fully cleared the air. Her breathing is even and slow, the particular depth of someone whose body has spent everything it had today and asked for nothing but this in return. The children do not stir. They sleep the way young children sleep, absolutely, without reservation, giving themselves over to it with the same wholehearted commitment they give to everything. The younger one has turned onto her side, one hand curled loosely beneath her cheek. The older boy has not moved since he was put down. The wool blanket rises and falls across them, both in the slowest possible rhythm. The fire settles with a quiet sound. Not a crack, just a soft shift of weight as an ember drops and the log above it tilts slightly inward. A brief brightening, almost nothing, and then the room is as it was. The rain has not changed. It was steady an hour ago and it is steady now, falling through the dark at the same unhurried pace it has maintained since evening. But now that the village has gone quiet around it, its sound carries differently. There is nothing to compete with it. No voices from behind walls, no scrape of a stool, no child's question rising above the general hum of an inhabited evening. Only the rain, moving through the air above the thatch, tapping the lane, filling the low places, running in thin rivers along the base of the hedgerows. The lane itself is a different thing at this hour. In daylight it was a thoroughfare, worn smooth by feet and wheels and hooves, always suggesting somewhere someone was going or had just been. Now it is simply ground, dark and wet and empty. The ruts hold their water quietly. The elm at the edge of the common stands in the darkness without being anything other than itself, its branches carrying the weight of the rain through the night, releasing it in drops heavy enough to make their own sound on the leaves below. A cat moves through the lane, picking its way along the edge where the mud is firmer. It pauses once, near the well, and looks at nothing in particular with the calm authority of a creature that considers the night its own. Then it continues, disappears between two cottages, and is gone. The lane is empty again. In the cottage nearest the common, the old man in the high-backed chair has finally been claimed. He did not move to the sleeping platform. Perhaps he never does this time of year. Perhaps the chair is close enough to the warmth that it suits him better than the cold at the back of the room. His head rests against the rough wood of the chair back, tilted slightly, and his hands are where they were when he was awake, resting in his lap. The cat that chose the hearthstone hours ago is still there, and will be until morning. The fire in this room has gone the furthest toward darkness. The embers are deep red now, barely giving light but still giving heat, enough to keep the room's warmth from leaving all at once. The cold will come in at the edges before dawn, through the ill-fitting shutter, up from the earth floor. But for now, the room holds what the fire has given it, as any well-made room will, for a few hours yet. Outside, the churchyard at the far end of the village sits in the rain without witnesses. The stone cross at its centre, worn smooth by generations of weather, is slick and dark. The grass between the low mounds is wet. An owl that was sitting in the yew at the boundary wall lifted away some time ago and has not returned. The yew itself is old enough that the rain barely reaches its inner branches. It keeps a dry circle at its base that nothing much grows in, just bare earth and old needles, dark and close-smelling. The church itself is locked and still. Its single window, small and set high in the east wall, gives no light. Inside, everything is as it was at Vespers. The rushes on the floor, the plain altar, the smell of tallow and cold stone. The sound of rain on the roof is different here than on thatch. Harder, more distinct, each drop a clear sound against the old stone tiles. It fills the interior without echoing, absorbed by the bare walls, becoming simply part of the silence rather than an interruption to it. Water is collecting everywhere now. In the ditch along the eastern edge of the common, it runs with a low, steady sound, carrying loose soil and fragments of leaf toward the mill stream. The mill pond beyond the village edge has risen an inch, its surface disturbed by rain into a continuous soft texture, and the overflow channel has begun to run, adding its small voice to the general conversation of water moving through low ground in the dark. The village sleeps through all of it. In one household, a man who was mending a leather harness when he sat down by the fire has left it unfinished in his lap, his hands relaxed around it, the awl resting on the floor beside his stool. He will find it there in the morning and not remember putting it down. In another, a woman who planned to card wool by the last of the firelight lasted perhaps a quarter of an hour before the warmth and the rain and the end of the day made the decision for her. The wool sits on the bench beside her, undisturbed. The dog stretched across the floor between door and hearth has shifted in its sleep, repositioning its weight with the slow deliberateness of an animal rearranging itself in a dream. Its ears move once, tracking something. Rain on the shutter, most likely, a sound it has heard 10,000 nights and has no reason to concern itself with. And then are still. The night is deep now. Not the blue-grey of early evening, not the dark that is still tinged with memory of daylight, but the full and settled dark of a night that has found its depth and stopped there. The clouds that brought the rain are thick enough that no stars show, and the lane and the common and the fields beyond are all the same undifferentiated dark, distinguished from one another only by texture. The softness of the grass, the slight shine of the wet lane surface, the deeper shadow where the hedgerows stand. The rain continues falling through all of it, unchanged, unconcerned, as it has been falling over this land since long before these cottages stood here, and will continue long after the thatch has been rethatched and the daub remixed and the families within changed beyond all recognition. It does not know that it is falling over a village. It falls because the clouds are heavy and the air is cool and the land is below, the same as it always has and always will. But the village knows the rain. The thatch knows it, having been woven thick enough to drink the first 2 inches and let the rest run off. The lanes know it, having been worn into the particular shapes that send water to the sides. The ditches know it, open and ready. Everything here has been made or arranged by people who understood that the rain would come and come again, and that the right answer was not to resist it but to build well, thatch thick, dig true, and sleep soundly beneath it. And that is what the village is doing now. The embers in the hearths are settling into their final warmth, giving off heat that will last until the small hours without flame, ticking softly to themselves in the dark. The families are laid down under wool and linen, their breathing slow and matched to one another in the way that people who have slept beside each other for years will unconsciously match their breath in the night. The animals are settled, the doors are closed, the rain falls on the rooftops in its soft, continuous way, and the rooftops hold. Nothing more needs to happen tonight. The village is exactly where it is, in the dark, in the rain, in the year it is. Small and warm and complete, its fires sleeping, its people sleeping, the rain moving through the air above it as though it were simply another quiet thing the night is doing. And it is.